Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Mercury Day, Mercury Hour. Mercury 13 degrees Pisces. Ascendant with Chiron in Aries. Midheaven 16 degrees Capricorn. Um, this is a water expands upon cooling episode. And this episode is to do with the disappearance of Moon is 0 degree Libra. Lilith 11 degrees Sag. The disappearance of Tanja Groen. And Tanja Groen was disappeared in 1993, and the suspicion, which DNA approves, is connected, according to what I see in use an L here. DNA approves connection between the disappearance of Tanja Groen to Marc Dutroux. And about a month ago, I saw Instagram post. Let me see if yes. Let me see if I can show this. No, I will not, because I was look. The search terms are not something that are relevant to this particular episode. The reason I was looking for Peter Adefries and Marc Dutroux is because of the Corvan Out case, and Peter was born the same time of Marc Dutroux. The Corvan Out case was basically Peter Adefries, true crime investigator, begins to litigate, persecutes, brings into prison Corvan Out, a criminal who kidnapped another criminal. um, People, Dutch is like somebody finally says it. So, but then Peter and Corvan Out, and I did the synastry on Spirit of Matter. They were born around the same year. They were going through the same Saturn, triggering Saturn Pluto square. And Peter had to show that he was very much beginning to relate to this Corvan Out, and they even may have had a more relationship. Yes, Peter was not monogam, so Peter had to show that it's only for the book, it's only for the movie. But these two, they really became close, and even the family now are still in relations with that crime family. And here's what they can't say about this: as the echelons Peter was coming from, they necessitated committing treason. And so it was sitting perfectly on the relation attachment pattern. Um, yes, people really don't like people talking about this, but this is important. If we don't want the lodges to become a concentration camp, then some change must ensue. And and the relation where there is good affinity, good friendship, but in times of like a Holocaust, there can be cases where one will have to betray one another. This was sitting exactly on that relational pattern, and this made them extremely close friends. Where one is true crime, is his job is to bring people to justice, and one is the criminal being brought to justice. So I was looking because Marc Dutroux was born with the same week as Peter the Vries, and they would have the same Saturn Pluto. Different moon, different moon, um, and the moon here is more to the square relation than the amiable Uranian relations as it was with Corvan Out. Also, Mercury is different, but I was wondering whether, because there's a lot of social engineering around each case, whether the 1987, where Peter was writing the Heineken and the Corvinaut and all of these things, whether they were trying to prepare for the possibility that he would have a chapter two of such unique relations with somebody like Marc Dutroux. But what ended up happening is that I think Peter also tended to the case of Tanja Groen. Also, his daughter, Kelly Elde Vries, tended to case of Tanja Groen around the assassination of Peter. Peter tended to case of the Purmerend murders, Nikki Verstappen. And as for me, when I was kidnapped and tortured following my thesis on the body-mind questions on the medicine during COVID, I was severely tortured, astrally raped um, for months. I was going through torture, and then I would basically do channeling experiment. Within the channeling experiment, there was something where I was healing my own inner child about this doll, and his name is Nikki. As Nikki, Nicholas, or something that was supposed to be transgender about the doll. And I was like, why Nikki? Um, Years later, I would run into the Nikki Verstappen case. I don't know if the people that tortured me were also targeting the Fries family. There was definitely something where, and the Fries family really, really must check if they were um, involved indirectly in harming me. Um, because, um, yeah, but um, yeah, so they would have no reason, of course, to harm me. It's over nothing, and I was running into case of um, Peter's assassination when I was in Netherlands and trying to study Dutch. So recording, not now. Lo, lo. You can open the door. Okay. Um, for case of um, Nikki Verstappen. Again, it was a case that was not solved for quite a while. Now, about a little background on the Dutroux, because they don't let Mark Dutroux talk about who was in the network. And I have to make over the information from survivors of ritual abuse, even from things that came before him, or that came before he became Mark Dutroux, like testimonies by Annika Lucas and the people Annika Lucas interviews. The way a perpetrator like Mark Dutroux is created, he was basically raped, tortured until he raped, and only way out, even housing, only housing would be a Dutroux state. This happens within lineage, and when I was standing to the cold cases were around Peter, and I was doing channeling, I got, they want your bloodline. And indeed, yeah, if I bridge this channeling information with information from with the cases of people that survived ritual abuse. Um, for example, case of Annika Lucas, she was thought to be expendable child, was horrifically tortured, and was is a child that could die in their ritual. And they did some sort of test, DNA test, and they discovered she is daughter of some aristocrat, and then she became a child that was to be trained to be a celebrity. She says elite sex trafficking, but this is inside the network. Outside the network, she would be something like you think about very, very modern. Even when you think about Sabrina Carpenter, okay, Beyonce Knowles, celebrity. But in Europe, and I think it was international, but Europe also, but the Bilderberg, but also American, and there would be complete dissociation. Okay, it's what they call today, what they call MK often, MK ultra, and what they call more modernly the Epstein ring. But back then it was before the Epstein ring, before the Dutroux dossiers. She, by the way, knew Michel Leroux, and not so favorably. Um, and from the perspective of real estate, one of the channelings I received was the families kill a person and then they have another house. And it was a feminine energy telling me this when I was building half moons and I had to escape the property. So And later I would find out there were cases of bodies buried in real estate locations, constructions locations, and the connection, the less spoken connection between these murders that are sacrificed for people when they buy a house in these echelons. And I would have people that are, they may be double agents, but they were also talking about the real estate. Yes, I'm not going to mention name because I don't want them to be targeted. Annika Lucas has a podcast and is open about her testimony. But these people, they also have social media, um, but I don't want to. Um, it's kind of like I'm not sure if they want me to mention them or not. Um, but they were talking about real estate moguls, and um, there is also the ceremony of one child killed, one child not killed. Um, that is very terrifying, but the true states had a couple of functions. One of the functions was extortion, but one of the functions would be that people would need to assassinate in order to join the network or in order to raise a degree, and that would be business connections, um, housing, mentions, passive income, and so on and so forth. From that, from this theoretical background, the case of Nikki Verstappen also happened in a village. A lot of people say, oh, I wouldn't grow my children in that village. It seemed to be a ritual sacrifice with some sort of something with the DNA to do with pedophilia. Um, Again, the pedophilia there is required, is a part of what is required for this because it's running by extortion. And these people are supposed to get smug and feel that they control the world, that they are a different class or even different species, and um, that the people are profane and is allowed to do that to the people, and then they're supposed to get smug about being able to get away with that. But this is all designed in order to generate every couple of decades such exposures that would keep them committing wars, committing genocide, looting earth, and eventually being exposed and disposed of or recycled. And this is why we see a month ago Instagram ad saying in Mark the True cells there was picture of child pedophilia. Okay, basically they have the tools to rehabilitate person from even being a Mark the True, but they keep maintaining that because this guy knows too much. This guy never actually had an option to be outside of the cult. He would either be assassinated, raped and assassinated and raped, assassinated and organ traded. Those were the options. Or he would be drug lord, which needs to do exact same things in network, but say that he doesn't harm women. And so, um, and the patent of keeping people tortured and raped without ability to die and without ability to let go is what creates war criminals, terrorists, um, serial offenders, and so on and so forth. And because it's a network, we understand that's a global thing. Father of Melissa did not want Mark Dutroux to speak about the network, which I discovered live when I was doing the series on the True the Seers. Um, and I do suspect that they were trying to prepare for somebody like Peter de Vries to do a Heineken, but that was too much. And indeed, Peter de Vries tended to the Pormeran murders, and he tended to. I know his daughter also tended to Tanja Groen, case in 2021 around the assassination of Peter de Vries. Now let's look at the chart. Water expands upon cooling style. First of all, let's take a look at the outer planet. I don't have exact hours, so I don't have ascendant in midheaven. And the moon here, although it came out 22, I don't assume the moon is 22. At any case, moon looks to be Mula Nakshatra. It can be Mula Nakshatra, or it can be middle decan Sag. If it is Mula Nakshatra, it is same Moon Nakshatra as Mark Dutroux. What does it mean? I don't know, but just as a note, as an astrology note there. Neptune, Antares. Neptune Antares is why I'm tending to this case. Why am I saying that? Neptune Antares is protected. It's psychically protected, and is protected when it comes to disease. It's protected when it comes to truth. It means that only way to tend to this case is the truth, the only truth, and nothing but the truth. And the people who inside certain lineage cannot tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And Jupiter, Aries. Jupiter is a sign of real estate. Neptune, Antares, she went missing, and Antares here, she also had, by the way, tended to, she was something to do with health services. She about to study health science. She was about to study health science. This would be the apprenticeship, because health science requires the doctors to have unregistered births. I think Kelly also tended to that. And the doctors are the one that torture the people at the hospitals. The doctors, for example, are the one prevented from Mark Dutroux to have access to exit the network, which is why he still consumes pedophilia. It's not just consumption of pedophilia, it's also rituals and astral rape of infants. Okay? And in this way, everyone suffers. Neptune Antares means that the case of her disappearance is very protected. We cannot solve this case without solving what I said about the medicine. In the hospitals with unregistered births, they torture the people until they become criminals. And she was about to study health science, and so she did not know, but that made her expendable, because if she would study health science, she would need to become the doctors that torture the children. And the Antares here basically prevented her from such future, unfortunately, by being a victim. Uranus 28 degrees Libra. Uranus ruled by Venus, but the Venus of Libra. Right now Uranus is 28 degrees Taurus. She had same Rahu and Ketu as Peter R. de Vries, by the way. Different years, but and also her case of was tended to around the assassination of Peter R. de Vries. Okay, she was missing in 1993, but around the assassination of Peter R. de Vries, she would also have Ketu return together with Peter R. de Vries. And Mars, okay, Chiron, she would have a Chiron return very soon, which would be wound around sovereignty, identity, and in that case it can be identity of the murderer, and indeed we see Chiron, around her Chiron return, that the DNA is shown to be connected to the network that Mark Dutroux was operating within, that included doctors that raped, that did unregistered births, that raped under the guise of psychiatry, that tortured, that created war criminals, that created nochbas. Okay, later, not now. Tavi. But I need water. Okay. Cautious. Venus in Leo, Venus very strong in Leo, telling me something to do with kind of like a Me Too case. Like I said, the people who said that the Me Too went too far are not in position where they could solve this case. Jupiter, Mars, Chiron, and indeed, when Jupiter was in Aries, we saw another revisitation of the case. I think it was 2022. Yes, I think it would be already 2022, 2023. And then the Chiron returned 2024, and now we see the DNA. Mars here in home sign is bloodline and blood and is DNA, which means that she was targeted for her DNA. Now, we have to take into account that even Mark Dutroux himself was tortured by doctors, by psychiatrists, by surgeons. So, if this was a girl that was going to study medicine, um, okay, and probably it was sacrifice. It's not unlikely the sacrifice had to do with real estate, because Neptune rules sacrifice, and Jupiter in sign of real estate. New real estate, new house, new estate. And this would be 3 years before. If she was energy siphoned, this could have been what exposed the true deceasers, because they would do energy siphoning. By the way, I was also, I went through such crime, and like I said, maybe these are the results. Because it causes the exposure of these things. Like I said, we are not sheeple, we are not profane, we have human rights, we have dignity, and cannot be taken and cannot be smear campaigned and cannot be where people are raped and then blamed to be a whore or blamed that they wanted it when they were filmed and they were tortured, filmed without their consent, tortured until, let's say, despicable things were done to them, humiliation. Now here's the thing, those things happen within those networks, within those societies. But in these societies, they cannot speak. They decapitate the person who would speak up rather than the person who would do that to a child or to an adult. Um, and this is something that is coming up right now strongly as Pluto proceeds in Aquarius. So she had Pluto in Libra, first decan of Libra. Um, Pluto square Sun, Sun in 0 degree Cancer, Saturn in Cancer. Her Saturn was on the ascendant of Peter R. de Vries. And thank you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Um, and Peter was a night chart. So I know the family tended to that case, and indeed Saturn rules death, and upon the death of Peter R. de Vries, his daughter tended to that case. Um, Again, committed to solve this, but we cannot solve this without talking about the network. We cannot solve this without talking about the Masons. We cannot solve this without talking about targeting by bloodlines. We cannot solve this without talking about energy siphoning rituals, ritual abuse, and the torturing of people, of how a perpetrator is being made. And when I talk about how Mark Dutroux is being made, is also paving the path to talk about these things. So because I was targeted, raped, attempted to kidnap me, using the energy timestamp of the DeFreeze. So maybe the DeFreeze were tortured at the time. Okay? Okay, and so this is very intricate issue when somebody takes on energy of, let's say, somebody and I'm raped by the energy or attempted to kidnap, I don't assume that this person did that to me. I understand that there are series of tortures, and it can be that the person was tortured and some third party was taking on their identity, which probably could have taken also my identity as I was raped and tortured, and I think is shown on Spirit of Matter channel on YouTube. There is also technological interface. Those issues are very intricate and very challenging. By the way, the Saturn Neptune was on Kelly DeFries Rahu. Um, and she has Mars to her father's Jupiter, um, which is around my descendant. Um, Black Moon Lilith, she had here 15 degrees Pisces. We had an eclipse on that Lilith. I also have Lilith around this eclipse. Um, and this is eclipse that involved also Venus Rahu, and we had a lunar eclipse there, which makes it more possible to discuss this case in the framework um, where it compounds. Um, it's very likely that this girl was kidnapped. Her bloodline was very likely targeted. And this could be through simple blood tests that the person takes at the HMO. They would also try to create accidents and mental hospitalizations so that people will have their blood taken, and so that they will be tortured, and so that they will not be believed, because they would. Now, here's the thing: the science of psychiatry, schizophrenia, is happening because of torture and ritual abuse. What people call psychosis is actually the information, and is indeed a very it's information that comes from lower frequency, from what we call the lower astral. Schizophrenia doesn't happen without these things. Even if person born to a lineage, they would need to be raped and tortured for the person to develop schizophrenia. And so it's not treated by medicine, it's treated by abolishing ritual abuse and by housing independent of ability to work, because the ritual abuse was about wealth consolidation on natural resources, was people for to get housed. Now, a lot of people within the network, if I take a look at ritual abuse survivors, they also killed children as children. And no, the so-called choice that they were offered was not really a choice, when they would not have housing, and when they would be forcibly addicted to drugs so that they will be trafficked, or so that they would become drug lord. Um, and this is case where we cannot solve this case without, and indeed, 2030 she's going to be having eclipses with Rahu on this Neptune, and then she will have a Rahu return, which also means Peter R. de Vries will have a Rahu return. You have to take into account that the person in such position as Peter was must have been born to lineages where some torture and dissociation would happen to the children. And I say it today, and I think the best thing is to understand that when this Rahus, I don't predict that to not be a point of discussion, and I think knowing the intricacy around these things and speaking the intricacy around these things is an alleviation of this. Nothing like energy siphoning, sacrifice, assassination can do. Look at the case of Tanja Groen. Okay? We're talking about this in 2026. She disappeared in 1993. Only this year, March this year, her DNA was found connected to. And then people say, well, DNA is not necessarily, it's not this. And here's another layer. Because these tortures are made also to create a mind control. Listen to Douglas McIntyre on Annika Lucas or in other medias, particularly the interview on Annika Lucas, where he talks about this. Through mind control, by proxy, by distance, a child or a person can be psychically attacked, and the consciousness of the handler uh, basically commits the crime through the body of the person, Frank Olson style. This may have been Frank Olson's suicide. And what we would see is, oh, that's the murderer. Here's the DNA. Okay? Um, and this is something that we must take into account. It changes forensics forever. Without ritual abuse testimonies, I could not have addressed this case, and I could not have addressed the things that I needed to resolve cases like this, like case of Nikki Verstappen, and these cold cases, or even assassination of Peter R. de Vries. Okay? Um, and we have to remember that a lot of these lineages, a lot of these bloodlines were bloodlines that escaped the concentration camps and had to do what they had to do to escape. And this is the continuation of the lineage, I know, even before concentration camps and so on, but we are also at the time where there are concentration camps. Now we'll talk about something lighter, which is the energy reading that came about. And this was energy reading of an encounter between people from the lineages where they would have to, when they would work on energy siphoning and so on and so forth, and always had to try to push the karma away. They would curse themselves even. Um, and a person that is going for secure attachment and so on and so forth. And that encounter is between, hey, this is what survives the concentration camps, to this is what sustains life. So, and I think that is relevant also for the true dossiers or the Epstein files. So this is a very deep and profound conversation. Why are we tending to this case right now? Let's take a look at the current planets. Chiron. Chiron, Chiron Aries is between the Mars and Chiron of Tanja Groen. Her picture was, of course, on the White March. Mercury is applying to her Lilith. Neptune ingress to degree 2. I haven't even noticed that. I began. Okay. Neptune squares of Capricorn first and 0 degree. Of first degree, we have not finished our Neptune square. Okay. Which means also for Kelly de Vries, she did not finish. Saturn and Neptune will meet again on this Rahu. And Jupiter is about to apply to Peter R. de Vries' ascendant and to the Saturn of Tanja Groen. I don't know if Tanja is a day chart or a night chart. Peter, I believe for sure he's a night chart. Yes, I know he's ascendant Cancer, so Sun in Scorpio is a night chart. Lilith 11 degrees. Lilith was crossing the Neptune of Tanja Groen. By the way, when I was posting her photos, Lilith was on that Neptune when I was doing the series on Marc Dutroux. Yes, it's 100% is connected to Marc Dutroux network, but I also tell you why she was targeted. She was about to be that doctor, and the doctors are inquisitioners, and this Neptune was the degree that was protected. She was protected from being an inquisitioner, but she was not protected from being sacrificed, unfortunately, and thus she was murdered, probably as ritual sacrifice. It can be to the building of a hospital, to the rejuvenating of a hospital, or to a house like the true state. But I believe she was energy siphoned, and I believe that my series on the true dossiers upon the Saturn return is a part of what her energy came to do in this world. And even though she died, their energy still exposes these things and still brings courage. I hope also protection with that courage to expose these things and to talk about these things. Um, Peter R. de Vries, and I dare say also with the family, could not have solved this case because what to tend to, he would need to say what I am saying, and to say what I am saying, he couldn't. We saw that in when he was defending Deming, and he says the family guy is not the same guy, and so on and so forth. Where I got this is, by the way, what got me to the Sears, because I was like, wait a second, what the fuck is happening? Um, I did not know Peter. I grew up in Israel, so I did not see that this was number one show, and it was also true crime number one in the world, and I did not know who the guy was. I just saw a case of assassination. I was tortured. I was homeless. I channeled, and first thing I hear is this country is North Korea. I didn't know if it's real, if it's not, if it's AI, and until today I don't know what belongs to what, and because I went through all the horror things that I went through, I was like, well, if somebody was hurt from him, from like Me Too stuff or something like that, he's such an important man, nobody will be able to speak. And then I saw that I tried to look if there is some scandal. I saw only one lady that wanted the house when he died, and I said, okay, well, that's somebody was into him. Okay, that's it. Anyway, he was not monogam, so whatever. And then when I was in Netherlands, I was shown how to save children from being kidnapped. Um, Basically, by being aware, okay, if somebody is holding child or taking child, even the vicinity next to them, placing ourselves next to them, already they're not comfortable to proceed. The use of the camera to film things. Later, I would find out that he was filming this. Um, I call him Holladier, and that was because in Europe it's not allowed to film and so on and so forth. So the use of the camera to expose and to defend from crime, um, and then I suddenly see this Deming thingy. So it completely shook me. Um, Many other things happened. Uranus was on my 22 degree Taurus, lot of spirit, and I began to do water expands upon cooling. Um, and yeah, it was astrology of assassination, also inspired by assassinated astrologer Nicolas Stojanovic, that may have also come from these lineages. Um, and he had the degree theory. Um, I was raped using energy of the son of the Fries for some reason. I don't know why. Again, I'm not saying it's him. It's probably he was tortured. This is also why I speak about it, because these people probably were tortured, and and that basically means that they were targeted, and it could be a part of the people who were trying to assassinate Peter, that were trying to assassinate the family. Um, and and again, I don't know on what grounds, but I got the feeling that the DNA, the Pormerand murders, and Tanja Groen could be connected to why Peter was assassinated. They were afraid that he would speak because he was. Well, they can't say it. But then Mark Rother was also targeted for kidnapping, and so go figure. Go figure. Yeah. Um, Uranus right now would be in conjuncting Uranus of Tanja Groen. I'm telling you, this was 100% the network. And people say, oh, is Mark the true? The network. This is also why 1 month ago, suddenly, oh, pedophilia discovered by Marc Dutroux. As far as I'm concerned, it can be a ritual where he was tortured again until again he will do these rituals on children. And every time they do energy, I was raped, they siphoned with my energy. What came up? This series. Every time King James haunted the witches, siphoned their energy while blaming them in witchcraft. What happened? How his kingdom fell? How is remember? Oh, the guy that did the 30 Years' War. He was supposed to be the guy that does the peace agreement with Spain, unites the kingdom, brings equal rights to the Scottish. How is he remembered? Oh, that terrible person that did the 30 Years' War. And the witch hunt, which he was blaming for the witches. He is basically remembered as the inquisitor that he was because of these rituals. Um, and right before they were trying to recreate a ritual of to rape and to do energy siphoning towards me because they do it astral. I'm using technology interface and those things of real estate. Okay, the previous estate I had to run away from as a tenant even. Um, so let me see if the potatoes are ready. Anyway, what more important transits do we have to chart of Tanja Groen? And see, I left what expands upon cooling. I didn't do another series. I kind of left it. But then, because of energy siphoning, because there are attempts to recreate, because there are attempts to siphon off of energy, probably also of Tanja Groen, and but also of my energy, look what happens. I saw this since the Me Too, because there was the stuff like that was done around the Me Too, and then I wrote Sugar-Free Lemonade. What can I say? This is the result of those practices that violate human rights, the raped as the profane, and this is also what um, was behind. Now, here is what I don't see in Tanja Groen's chart. Degrees, if this moon is indeed 22, or the ascendant or midheaven 22, then, but other than that, Mercury in its home sign. Let's do the transits from here. And by the way, other astrologers cannot talk about it necessarily because some of them were involved in harming me. Some of them were involved in helping me. But some of them were involved in harming me. For the cloud, but also for the cults where they sacrifice people. Again, for the people that do that, they're also tortured and so on and so forth. Yes, but I want to find the transits. Go in transits. Okay. Let's see. Well, I don't see it from here. Then I will do it by heart. Moon is about to course the Pluto of Tanja Groen. Um, yeah, this triple conjunction Jupiter, Mars, Chiron is being strong. Now there's going to be the entire sovereign stellium of Aries is going to go over this Chiron, Mars, and Jupiter. This truth is coming out, and if what doesn't come out by now will come out by, it's going to be 2031, 2032, where we're going to have Rao return for Tanja Groen, ook voor Pieter A. de Vries. Um, the network assassinated them both, I think is safe to say now. And we cannot blame it on the drug lords are the people that escaped the network because they weren't willing to do. Okay, but if it was a man, it would be drug lord. If it was a woman, she would be trafficked. And this is something, but also sometimes the drug lords are within the network because they provide the drugs basically. Um, yeah, so we're going to have the entire stellium of Aries going through. Now we had Venus. This is why we mentioned this case right now. We had Venus, um, and it's also Uranus, Libra, astrologer, then to justice. Uranus is astrologer, Libra is justice, Venus in Leo, Me Too related. The Me Too didn't go too far. The Me Too was the Epstein. The Me Too was the true the Sears. The Me Too was ritual abuse. The Me Too is the genocide in Gaza, the killing of the children in the school in Iran, the kidnapped and the tortured in the Ukraine-Russia war. It was exposed, the damning dossiers were exposed when United States didn't like the people in The Hague supporting the separatists in Turkey because United States would have been litigated in genocide of Kurdistani people. The Epstein files is the genocide of Kurdistani people. And the potatoes are still not ready, I believe. Yes, month of Nisan, freedom, sovereignty, stellium in Aries. And indeed, I was not even thinking to do another water expands upon cooling episode. Um, these things only happen when there are attempts to siphon energy, when there are attempts to do such things. And this is the result.